I think that what gold represents is, truthfully, will be a cornerstone to whatever new system arises. I think that it's very difficult to get people to drink the Kool-Aid again after the mismanagement of the dollar as the world reserve currency. And what gold represents, not only to the BRICS, but I think to all of the central banks, is stability. It is a tether to the fact that politicians throughout all of history have chosen inflation over austerity, and you will not be able, I think, to issue a new system if it is not backed by something. So yeah, I think this is real this time.
The mismanagement of the US dollar as the global reserve currency has made it difficult for people to trust traditional currencies. Andy Schectman, the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, believes that throughout history, politicians have often chosen inflation over austerity, and therefore, a new system would require backing by something valuable like gold. In a recent interview, Schectman highlighted that central banks and financial institutions are showing increased interest in buying gold. The reclassification of gold by the Bank for International Settlements further supports this trend. The head of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has emphasized that any central bank digital currency should be backed by assets to avoid excessive speculation. This aligns with the idea that a new system needs a solid backing to ensure stability. Up to 93% of the world's central banks are experimenting with some form of digital currency, CBDC, with 24 expected to have one in circulation by the end of the decade, the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, found in a survey. Not only this, IMF is also working on a platform for central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, to enable transactions between countries, IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said on Monday. CBDCs should not be fragmented national propositions. To have more efficient and fairer transactions, we need systems that connect countries. We need interoperability, Georgieva told a conference attended by African central banks in Rabat, Morocco. CBDCs have the potential to promote financial inclusion and make remittances cheaper, she said, noting that the average cost of money transfers stands at 6.3%, amounting to $44 billion annually. The Atlantic Council found that 114 countries representing more than 95% of global GDP are exploring a CBDC, with 60 in an advanced phase of development, pilot, or launch. Schectman speculates that the United States may try to counter the shift towards the emerging BRICS system by issuing its own CBDC backed by a commodity. While he acknowledges that a new currency may not be directly convertible to gold, he suggests that it could be partially backed by gold or a basket of commodities. This would provide credibility and ensure the integrity of the currency on a distributed ledger. Now, let's watch excerpts from Andy Schectman's interview with Commodity Culture. Be sure to watch the entire video and consider subscribing to our channel. Remember to enable post notifications to stay updated on our latest uploads. Thank you and enjoy the video. Now let's add the video here.
100%. Look, the BIS said that every country has to have an operational CBDC by 2025. Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, not only said what you said, but she also stressed that CBDC should be backed by assets, and that cryptocurrencies, if they are not backed by assets, become speculative assets, speculative investments. And so why are the central banks buying gold? Why did the BIS reclassify gold? You tell me. Are they going to issue a gold-backed Western IMF-backed system? I don't know. They published a report a few months ago that said gold as an international reserve, ? A barbarous relic no more. So, not only is the IMF talking about CBDCs, but talking about the interoperability of them, talking about the fact they need to be backed by something. This would fit a very close narrative to what we see with the BRICS. When I was asked this question in Vancouver when we were there by someone else who was interviewing me, she said, "Is there any way that the U.S. can stop this exodus out of the dollar, out of the Western system into this new BRICS system?" And I thought to myself, well, the only way they could do it would be to beat the BRICS to the punch and to issue their own backed central bank digital currency backed by a commodity. You must have some sort of tether, or it will be repeat of the same thing that we've seen over and over and over again throughout all of history. Go back to Roman times. when they would cut the edges of the coins to pay their soldiers. And that's why you have ridges on coins, so that you would see if the coin was just basically cut around the edges just to save it, scrape off a little bit of silver, a little bit of gold, and make the coin smaller and smaller and smaller. Hopefully they wouldn't notice. That's why you see ridges. The point of it is that politicians have been doing this forever. If you don't have it backed by something, it ain't going to work. And I would argue that they're not going to back it 1-to-1. They may back it 10 or 15 or 20% of every new currency unit in circulation as a 10 or 15% backing to gold or other commodities. If we follow what the BRICS said, it could be a basket of commodities, but backed, showing the veracity of it and the immutability of it on a distributed ledger. You can make it work. It won't be convertible. It won't be 1-to-1, but it will be tethered so that when it comes to, for example, what the U.S. did over the last 4 years, creating more money in the history over the last 4 years in the history of the country preceding it. You can't do that. You're destroying the country. You are destroying the currency. And that's exactly what the Federal Reserve has been doing, not to mention keeping interest rates at their lowest level in the history of human civilization over the last decade plus. The distortions that created, I think the world realizes that if they don't have something backing a new system, that it's not going to work. And when you see Georgieva, the head of the IMF, come out and publicly say that in order for this to work, it needs to have backing, that's real. And of course, the report talking about gold as no longer being a barbarous relic, to me, that's real. Any reason why the central banks keep loading up on gold? That's real. So for me, that's how you make this work. That's how you make people feel a lot easier about a CBDC. Hey, don't worry, it's backed by gold, and you can see it. And it gives it immediate legitimacy. Instead of taking our word for it, it gives it immediate legitimacy if it's done the right way.
Schectman believes the current circumstances surrounding gold accumulation are exceptional and should be noticed. Central banks globally have accumulated gold reserves this year at a pace not seen since 1967, when the precious metal still backed the U.S. dollar. According to a New World Gold Council (WGC) report, demand for gold in the September quarter was up 28% year-on-year, reaching 1,181 tons. The demand for gold this year has been primarily driven by a flight towards safer assets amid scorching inflation. Schectman emphasizes that the trend of substantial gold acquisitions is not limited to BRICS countries, but also by the world's most well-funded, informed, and influential traders. He highlights the impact of this gold buying spree on significant exchanges like COMEX, LBMA, London Metals Exchange, and the Shanghai Gold Exchange. He believes that gold supplies on these exchanges have been depleting, with significant withdrawals of gold and silver being observed. Let's get back to the interview.
I believe that to be the case 100%. I mean, look, why did the BIS reclassify gold in 2019? Why did all the central banks, the German Bundesbank, the Bank of Austria, the Dutch National Bank, the Bank of Hungary, Turkey, Poland, the Czech National Bank, why did they all repatriate their gold from the Bank of England and the New York Fed? Why have the central banks bought more gold in the last 18 months than at any time in history? Why did they buy more the first quarter this year than at any time in history? You mentioned Singapore. They are number one on the list this year, right behind Turkey, who was number one last year. Look at the amount of gold imports or exports, rather, out of Switzerland. Again, this month, number one, China, number two, India, number three, Saudi Arabia. These countries are massively accumulating gold, and not just the countries that have applied to BRICS or the members of them. The most well-funded, well-informed, and influential traders on the globe are showing us this. They are massively accumulating it, and if the price alone was indicative of the value, not only would I ask, why are the central banks buying it the way they are, but I would also ask, who the hell is bleeding down the world's exchanges? Whether you're talking about the COMEX, which is showing the lowest level, the second lowest level of silver in the history of the exchange, and gold being bled down as well, even more on a percentage basis. Look at the London Metals Exchange. Look at the Shanghai Gold Exchange. You are seeing massive deliveries of both gold and silver off of the exchanges by not only the most well-funded investors on the planet, but the most well informed. And when you draw down supplies from COMEX and LBMA, it's more than just saying they're taking delivery. It's incredibly sophisticated. It is not an easy thing to do. And when you leave those ecosystems as a big institutional buyer or industrial buyer, you lose all industrial liquidity. It is a one-way ticket when they leave the COMEX, when they leave the LBMA. These are one-way tickets. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the largest one-day withdrawal of silver ever off the Shanghai Gold Exchange. This is not just a Western phenomenon. You're seeing globally a drive to accumulate gold and silver and to use the suppression, the Western suppression of price, to run cover for the massive and rampant acquisition. So yeah, I think this time it seems a little bit different to me.
The trend of gold accumulation is likely to continue as more and more people and institutions lose faith in the US dollar and other fiat currencies. Gold is a more stable and reliable store of value, and it is ultimately a better hedge against inflation and economic uncertainty. Do you think that the shift towards a gold-backed system is inevitable? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found this video informative, remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and enable notifications to stay informed about our latest videos on silver, gold, and copper. Thank you for watching, and we appreciate your support.